All right, if you want to gather around the table here, we're going to switch gears here just a little bit. But first, some housekeeping. There is a porta potty around the corner. If you need to use it, feel free to do that. I noticed the water is out in the back wagon, but hopefully there's still water in the front wagon. So if you need a bottle of water, you might have to go toward the front coolers to find a full bottle. So before I get started into the talk here, I want to talk more about early season. When we have these field days, typically what you see in the field is, stuff that's in the grain fill period, and we don't talk much about early season management of wheat. But before I get started into that, are there any questions about any topic at all that you wanted to hear about today that you haven't heard already? Any burning questions? No? Yes? So the question is, what about late application of nitrogen at flag leaf? I don't know if Kurt is with us here right now, or if he might be up getting ready for his stop. Maybe he could address this too. But late application of nitrogen at flag leaf, a few things. You got to be really careful not to burn the leaf. So you got to be careful what you apply, how you apply it. So if you're going to stream on 28%, try to do it in the evening when it's cool. And if you can time it just in front of a rain shower or even apply in the rain, that is the best. The benefit from applying late nitrogen, there can be some stay green effect, which lengthens that grain fill period, which is a positive thing. But typically, the late nitrogen will increase protein in the grain. And there's an inverse relationship between protein and yield. So in high yield, protein's low. As the yield decreases, protein goes up. So we don't grow wheat that is a hard red winter wheat we don't have to meet protein targets. Okay, our soft red wheat ranges from probably 8 to 10, maybe 11 protein. The targets for the hard, they've got to hit that 13 to 14 range, and so they have to apply nitrogen late in order to get there. Any other questions about anything? Anybody have stripe rust? Marty probably asked that. Anybody have lodging? I do, yeah. I've got lodging in a few locations, actually. Okay. All right, no other burning questions? Okay, well, let's get to it, and hopefully we'll do this without the rain coming. If I can get through my stop without it raining, I think we'll get through the rest of the day, just based on the radar. So I wanted to talk a little bit about early season management. Manny and his crew talked a little bit about some planting stuff, seeding rates and row spacings and things like that. So I've got some plants up here at different growth stages, but I can't stand in front of there. So you're welcome to come up and look at what I've got here. One of the things is, do you all know how to identify the beginning of stem elongation? You can find when the node is visible first. And you know what growth stage that is? It's Feekes 6. So on this plant here, this is almost at Feekes 6. Actually, no, it is at Feekes 6. There is a node right above my fingers on here. You can, if you run your finger up and down the stem, you can feel the bump there. That is Feekes 6. It's important that we know that growth stage because that is when rapid uptake of nitrogen begins. It is also a timing mechanism for herbicide applications. There are some herbicides that you need to have applied before stem elongation starts. And it's just a change in the growth and development of the crop. So by this time, let me ask you, when would you time your nitrogen? Do you want your nitrogen on before or after this stage? Before, right. So if you're doing a single application, how much before? Well, nobody knows, or nobody wants to say. I understand. I wouldn't want to put myself out there either, probably. So typically, if you're doing a single application, I would say you want to time it right around this Feekes 5 to 6. Get that nitrogen out there at that point, because you got to have it in the soil available for the rapid uptake phase, which this one is starting right now. So you got to get it out there. If you're going to do a split nitrogen application, some people will scout their fields and walk it in the spring and kind of make a decision on how early they want to get nitrogen out there, based on what it looks like. How much growth did we have in the fall? How much tillering did we have? And sometimes they'll want to put on an early application. Should we put on freeze-up applications? No. There's usually the amount of nitrogen uptake going on at that point is low to none. So we don't usually get a lot of benefit from freeze-up applications. So you want to let the crop green up and start growing a little bit before you do that. So let's go back. That only partly worked. Thank you, guys. So let's go back earlier in the season. So we would hit this. If you look at these, you can see actually there's 2 full leaves out and a third one starting to emerge. Do we have any tillers yet? Nope. Okay. Is this a critical growth stage point for anything? Does anybody put herbicide on in the fall? Yeah, I see a hand over there. Okay. So do you have good luck with the herbicide in the fall? You bet. You get good control? Yep. So what's the keys to putting herbicide on in the fall? Yeah. So you got to get your crop planted on time, right? Because most of the herbicides, you got to have 2 full leaves out, right? So if you're planting late and you don't get 2 full leaves out, you're not going to be able to put the herbicide on without risking injury. And you got to have enough growth by the weeds for the herbicide to do any good. So fall herbicide is a great option. You got to be at this growth stage or later in order for that to be possible. And you got to be planted on time, because if you don't have any weed growth, in the fall, your fall herbicide isn't going to really do you a whole lot of good. But where you can, fall application of herbicide is a good idea. So what other fall management things? Anybody put a fungicide on in the fall? Yeah? Okay. Any particular reason? Okay. All right. Okay. So I do have some growers in the Yield Enhancement Network that are putting a fall fungicide on. Typically, we don't get a big infection of disease in the fall. And when I look at the data, it doesn't show me that a fall application improves yield. If you're putting other things with it, biologicals or micronutrients or something else like that, that can help the soil, maybe you're getting a little bit of benefit from that. But so typically fall is not a time when we would need fungicides. What other fall management do we need to do? Just plant it and then walk away from it? Any other management that anybody does in the fall? Keep the water off from it? So as in like drainage, you mean? Yeah. So there is some surface drainage stuff that happens. Some people use a V-plow to allow water to drain. Depends on the soil type and where you are. Yep. On the Oh, rolling it. Yeah. So rolling is becoming more popular, and we're doing it in beans. And we're seeing a lot in wheat. Some guys are rolling right after they plant. I have had the question, if you're behind in tillering in the spring, will rolling help make it tiller? And yes, there is some evidence that rolling in the spring, but you got to be in the right growth stage. If you're in this growth stage, should you tiller or should you roll? No. Okay. Because that growth state or that growing point is above the soil surface. So you have to be before Feekes 3 is done, because that's the tillering phase. So if you want to stimulate tillering, you got to get out there. Yeah, well, these are you got to get out in there probably about in this stage here, okay? Because this has one. Looks like a second tiller starting to come. So this was still tillering here.
Are there any studies with rolling, not rolling, timing of rolling, based on yield?
Yeah, so the question is there any studies with rolling, not rolling, based on timing and yield response and whatnot? There has been some work done in the Pacific Northwest on that. I'm not aware of a lot of work that has been done here. But and as far as yield benefit, a little bit of yield benefit from rolling, maybe of just a few bushels, as long as you can hit that early timing. So you got to be in the spring after green up. You still got to be before the end of tillering when you make that application. The field conditions have to be right for you to be out there, so you're not doing more damage than good. Okay, so if you're planting with a box drill, is there any benefit of rolling before you plant versus after you plant? Did I get that right? Yeah, yeah. So I think the critical thing, I mean, a lot of guys roll simply because it pushes rocks in the ground, and then they can run their header closer to ground, which maybe with wheat you don't really need to do that. For beans, that's something that you want to do. The goal with wheat is to get good uniform depth. If rolling before planting helps your planter get a uniform depth, then roll before. If not, you got to make sure that rolling afterwards doesn't cause issues with uniform depth as well. So kind of depends on your soil conditions and how much tillage you've done prior. Your ultimate goal with whether you roll or not should be based on uniform seed depth. Other questions? Boyd. Question was fall application with herbicide and putting insecticide in? Yeah, so the insecticide. So we have heard that there are some diseases that get transmitted in the fall. And usually those critters that are doing that, aphids is one of them. We don't have a lot of Hessian fly anymore. We try to plant after that date anyway. But it would be a rare case where there would be enough aphids in a field. You'd have to be scouting pretty carefully. Chris DeFonso does have a scouting guide for aphids, and it's something like you walk out into a field, stop, and count how many aphids are on a plant. And if you're above a threshold, do it like 20 more times. And if you're still above the threshold, then it's should treat for that. One thing that I found out with this Yen program, the folks in Ontario, they do not use insecticide like we do. We add it on if we're going across the field just as a just in case kind of thing. And what we find is that we're killing off our beneficial insects as well as the bad insects. So because because their management practices, and I think they have some regulations that limit their ability to put insecticide on. They have a pretty strong population of natural predators that keep their insects in check. So, but that would take some time for us to get there. Any other questions? All right, over the winter and getting into the spring when we green up, do we know how to determine when the crop greens up in the spring? The green up is when you have 7 days in a row with 5 GDD accumulation or higher. You got to have 7 days in a row, and that is technically when green up occurs. So people talk about, making their management applications at green up or like their first nitrogen pass. So green up is something that you can look up. You can go to the weather station and look up the GDDs. For wheat, a GDD is calculated using Celsius degrees. So if you go to the Michigan Automated Weather Network or EnviroWeather, they have weather stations scattered across the state. You can pick the station closest to you and pull up what their heat unit accumulation has been. That's the point at which wheat begins to grow, and that's the point at which you need to start scouting and paying attention to what diseases are out there. Does anybody have powdery mildew this year? Yeah, quite a lot. How many put a T1 fungicide on, the early fungicide? Yeah, not as many. Yeah, a few. So the scouting for those early season diseases is something that's pretty important in terms of management. Then timing your application of nitrogen in the spring is also important. And just you got to spend a little bit of time walking the field. That's what the Yen program, the participants tell me. They say, I didn't realize there was that much to look at when you go out to walk a field. And so if you get out there and look, you can see and pick up on these things that are going on before they do a lot of damage. So scouting these fields and paying attention to what the crop is doing is pretty important. And so, this is all stuff that you do early on in the season, before you get to where you're wanting to plant corn and beans and things like that. So we're getting about time to switch. Is there any other final questions or anybody got predictions on yield? What are state average yields going to be? Above average? Yeah, I think we could be above average. I think some farms are going to see record yield. Probably not all. Any other questions? Okay. If you want to get back on the wagons, we're going to head down to Christie's Stop, straight down.